Welcome to another episode of The Radio Vet with Dr. Kelly. I'm giggling because I know something you people don't. I know the topic for today, and at this point, it makes no sense to me. I'm as in the dark as you. So, doctor, help us out.
All right. I thought we'd talk about liver and onions today, and
that'll stink up the entire joint. Just so you know, you get that in
as a kid, I did have to eat liver and onions once in a while, and I didn't mind the onion part.
So you were a naughty child that had to be punished regularly.
Right. I think they believed it was healthy in the 70s.
It's a lot of things they thought were healthy in the 70s, which, joke's on us, they weren't.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, how does this pertain to our furry friends?
Let's talk about the liver, the real liver, the actual liver, which, is what you eat, but let's talk about dog and cat livers.
Okay. I hear it's more about what you drink, but that's just for us.
So what is the liver, and do we really need it anyways? So the liver is a pretty big organ. It lives right beneath your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle that separates your chest cavity from your abdominal cavity. Mm-hmm. And it has several jobs. One, it metabolizes proteins, fats, and carbohydrates for use by the body. It stores essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. It makes some very important digestive enzymes, which are then stored in the gallbladder. And the gallbladder stores them until they are needed in the upper small intestine, where a lot of digestion actually takes place.
So, the liver's beyond critical.
It's beyond critical, yes. It also breaks down medications, toxins, and is also one way that the body eliminates waste. So
it's almost... I think I'd rather have my liver than my heart. Not only because if I had to make a choice, not only because there's no such thing as an artificial liver, but there is an artificial heart.
Well, there are liver transplants, though.
That is true.
Yes.
That is true. But you cannot make one in the lab just yet, can you? From scratch?
I don't know. Maybe someone's done it. Not from scratch, no.
You're debunking all of my science fiction theories here. Okay, so...
so very, very important. Luckily for all of us who have livers and depend on them, the liver is also an extremely regenerative organ. It can suffer rather great insults and still recover completely.
So you're talking about that 180 proof barrel aged,
right? Yeah.
As we abuse the liver, it's give me what you got. I can hack it. I can take it. So let's swing towards cats and livers and cats and what kind of problems could we see happening in a feline liver?
Cats have cute little livers, and
you've seen them. I have not, so I cannot make that judgment call.
So cats, as we've discussed briefly in the past, can get something that's unique to them, at least in the veterinary world. They can get liver failure from fatty liver disease.
Ah.
Yeah, so when a rather large cat, a cat with far more body fat storage than it really needs, suddenly stops eating, and the body needs energy, what does it do? Well, it takes advantage of all this great fat storage that this plump cat has, but the fat is in storage, and it needs to become accessible as far as energy goes. So what happens? It gets sent to the liver for processing.
Aha.
And because there's way too much of it available, the liver gets overwhelmed, fat gets deposited in the liver gets really angry, stops working well, and then fails.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So fatty liver disease is something that's pretty unique to cats, at least in my part of medicine.
Is there something that kind of predicates, why would they get fatty liver disease?
Oh, yeah. You're right.
What are we doing wrong?
How did that happen to begin with? When a chubby cat completely and utterly 100% stops eating, they stop taking in energy. And then the body says, oh, no, I need energy. So it goes for the fat, of course. So it's actually far more dangerous for a fat cat to stop eating than it is for a skinny cat to stop eating.
And why would a fat cat who clearly are a fan of food, why would they just stop eating?
So many reasons.
Psychological.
Maybe they ate a piece of a toy and it's stuck in them and it's not going to pass. Okay. They have a bad virus and a high fever, so they don't feel like eating. they have cancer somewhere. They have, there's just many reasons. But ultimately, if a cat stops eating for too long, we really start worrying about fatty liver disease, especially if it's a heavy cat.
And it comes on pretty fast, and if they're like, on a hunger strike of some sort. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be in as little as 3 to 5 days, but in my experience, it's it's often been beyond that as well. When it starts, it probably is rather individual, but yeah.
Well, let's go to the other team then, and see what's going on in those dog livers.
Symptoms of liver disease in general are rather nonspecific in the beginning. So when the liver is unhappy, there's something going on in the liver, a dog or a cat would have a reduced appetite. Vomiting, diarrhea would also be common. Weight loss when it's gone on long enough. Increased thirst, and consequently they're urinating more too. So these are all rather nonspecific signs. Later on, when it's gone on a little bit longer, some more owners who are more astute and pay attention may notice.
That's me.
May notice jaundice. So the whites of the eyes have a yellow hue to them, and the gums, rather than being completely pink, have a little bit of a yellow tinge to that pink color too. When they're jaundiced, they'll also have very dark looking urine, like amber colored, because there's that pigment is coming out in that way too.
So I'll go home and check all three of those things immediately when I walk in the door today. Yeah. End stage or really severe liver disease, they'll develop neurologic symptoms. They'll walk funny. They'll be confused. They'll have seizures. Oh boy.
They can also develop swelling in gravity-dependent areas, free fluid in the abdomen called ascites, and then because the liver also makes coagulation factors, they can also develop random bleeding.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so blood in the stool, blood in the urine, bloody nose, blood in the front. A dog came in once with free-floating blood in the front of its eyeball.
Oh, boy.
And
are we past the point of no return at that juncture then?
Once they've got the fluid in the abdomen, that's looking pretty darn bad.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. So causes can be age-related. There's a lot of senior dogs who have some rather benign changes in their liver, but do affect their numbers on blood work. That's very common. There's genetic liver conditions. In Yorkshire Terriers especially, there's something called a liver shunt, an abnormal circulation where the venous return, the blood that's been that's coming back from the intestines, the GI tract, rather than going to the liver and getting filtered, it bypasses the liver, and all these toxins that got absorbed stay in the liver.
Okay.
So there's some abnormal circulation that they were born with that in many cases can be corrected.
Yeah.
But that's something genetic. There's also a copper storage hepatopathy or liver disease that classically, when I was in school, we only believed it was in Bedlington Terriers. Now we know it's also in many like golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers. Dobermans have a version of it too.
Rat terriers?
Not that I know of.
Good. Thank you. All right, just checking.
So that's a condition in which they inherited a disorder of their copper metabolism, and copper builds up in the liver and causes it to fail eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. Toxins are a common cause of liver disease. So Amanita mushrooms, some dogs like to eat those. Blue-green algae in lakes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sago palm, a kind of palm that's common in some places.
Okay.
Xylitol, an artificial sweetener.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
That's in chewing gum.
And then some types of molds that grow on food that dogs are happy to eat will also be really bad for the liver.
So typical. So typical. All right.
So there's medications that some dogs have to take that can be hard on their liver in the long run. A very common epilepsy medication that dogs take. Steroids, if they have to be on steroids in the long run for immune-mediated diseases, medication that suppresses their immune system. Their liver doesn't like that. Cancer, of course, can occur in the liver. Mm-hmm. And there's some other diseases that affect the liver secondarily. Diabetes. Mm-hmm. Dogs and cats get diabetes. Cushing's disease, much more in dogs than in cats.
Right.
And hyperthyroidism, very common in middle-aged and senior cats.
Okay.
And then there's also trauma. If you are in a car accident and your
yeah.
liver suffers a great big literal, blunt blow.
Sure.
And a whole bunch of, liver cells die because of that. Yeah, you've got a liver problem.
Oh, that's issues immediately. Yeah. Better out. Okay.
So, I said the liver is a very regenerative organ. It is. In fact, 80% of liver cells have to have died before we actually get failure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a resilient, I'm starting to like the liver here. I'm making me a fan.
The liver amazes me.
I mean, what a piece of, great piece of machinery. Good job.
Exactly.
All right. Well, today's episode is entitled apparently Liver and Onions. We took care of the liver part of the promise. Come back for the second half for onions. We shall return, everybody. And we're back on the Radio Vet with Dr. Kelly here on CPL Radio, a show that has all sorts of facets. If someone had told me this morning when I got up that we'd be doing a show called Liver and Onions on the Radio Vet, I would have said, nah.
Why
Kelly
not,
wouldn't
though?
do
Why
that.
not?
My dad, boy, he loves liver. Oh my gosh. Oh, he doesn't get it very often because my mother says, this is bad for you. She's probably right, I'm assuming. But he's a fan. So, but when you think about it, what a miraculous organ the liver is. We have no right to eat anybody's liver. I mean, come on, it's a beautiful thing. And there we are just gobbling it up and frying it in a pan. It's so wrong. All right, here we are, second half of the show, the onion half of the show.
We'll get to the onions.
Do dogs have onions for organs? I don't know.
No.
I'm so confused.
No, and they really shouldn't.
I charge malpractice if you blame onions on. So all right.
So just to finish up with that darn liver.
Oh, sure. That darn liver. I saw that movie.
How do we figure out what's wrong with a liver anyway? Blood work is,
sure.
the first logical step because there's quite a few values in basic blood work that pertain to liver health. And then there's a function test, testing something called bile acids, and then X-ray, of course. Mm-hmm. Images the liver in the most basic way as far as size and shape. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, there would be ultrasound where you can also look at more of the internal texture, if you will. So if there's masses in the liver that have a different texture than the normal liver, that would show up, or obviously an abnormal shape.
Sure.
Can also be biopsied. Really, you don't truly 100% know what's going on in the liver unless you go get a piece of it.
Yeah.
Either through an ultrasound guided biopsy where basically a large needle is used in order to go in and get a chunk of liver, or a surgical biopsy where you actually get to see the liver and get a little tiny piece of it and send it into a pathologist and get an actual answer.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's a lot of fun to deal with. I mean,
I would
liver
say
issues.
I've been so impressed with the liver's ability to heal that I do actually find it kind of fun to deal with. Because
it's on your resume.
You can do some blood work on a sick little dog, get back horrific liver numbers, and if it's an acute insult, an acute sudden change to the liver, you got a pretty good prognosis as far as getting all the way back to normal and not having to be on anything in the long run.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Then there's other more chronic conditions that we'll see also in which, the values are a little elevated and they go up slightly over a long period of time until we're like, okay, your dog has chronic hepatitis. Do we want to figure out what's going on, or do we want to try treating them? Because there are also many very successful liver treatments as far as supplements. With an acute insult, especially if a pet had a fever, we would most likely be reaching for an antibiotic, along with some kind of anti-inflammatory. I mentioned how steroids are use in the long run can raise liver values and eventually harm the liver if it really doesn't tolerate them. But guess what? We use steroids to calm the liver down when it's suddenly really upset.
Steroids are a wild, untamed land.
We don't keep them on them permanently, in most cases, but they are part of acute therapy often to get the pet to feel better, eat, and get those numbers to start going down.
And people too. I mean, there's a lot of people who have steroids part of their life, and it's a double-edged sword for them too.
Yeah, and there also seems to be a chronic immune-mediated inflammatory hepatitis that you just can't quite necessarily always get a good control of without something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about those onions.
Yeah, about those onions. So onions are part of the allium family, meaning they're in the same family as garlic,
True. Yeah.
chives, and leeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And all of those.
Most of which I don't like.
Oh, really?
By the way, just say I'm starting to begin a little bit of a relationship with onions.
Huh.
Getting better.
Huh.
But my whole life I've always avoided them. Just not a fan.
But garlic?
Garlic's okay. I can live with garlic. Yeah, garlic's all right. Of that list, that is the one that I'm totally fine with. But yeah, it's all in preparation ultimately, right?
Chives, I could do without chives forever.
It's like eating grass and it's eating the lawn. I mean, it's like
spicy grass.
Spicy grass, big time. Yeah, no thanks. So yeah.
So what happens if a dog or a cat eats something from this family?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, initially they can get a lot of drooling because they can get kind of a mucosal surface reaction in their mouth, and they'll drool a lot. They can get GI upset, so some classic vomiting, don't feel good. What we're really worried about, though, if they get enough of it, is that it'll actually cause them to become anemic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So onions and its relatives have a substance in them that causes a lot of oxidative damage to dog and cat red blood cells.
Oh my.
And when the cells are damaged enough, they do what's called lyse. They essentially pop open and die.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. All
And
right.
so several days after eating something in this family, that's when they can be discovered to be anemic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel terrible. It's entirely possible that I gave my boy a full onion ring from Hefner's last week.
Yeah. Well, that is a cooked onion.
Oh, okay.
Which, would greatly, I believe, reduce the likelihood of the dangerous substance.
It was mostly
super
breading.
Effective.
It was mostly oil and breading, I'm sure. No offense, no offense, Hefner's. They were delicious, but still.
Great part of the onion ring.
Well,
too.
yeah.
There are breeds that are more susceptible in the dog world than the average dog to this damage. The Japanese breeds, the Akita and the Shiba Inu.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, Akitas are intense dogs. I've only met one, and
they're very large.
They're large and they're kind of hardcore. They don't seem to have a sense of humor. That's the thing with Akitas that I met one, and he just was very serious about everything.
Yeah, they're serious. I was going to say they're stoic, but they are serious.
Yeah,
they just kind of stand there and they don't laugh at any jokes.
Right. And I tried everything. Let me tell you. Interesting. I didn't try onion rings. Hey. Thankfully. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, onions, not so great for our pets, unfortunately.
All right. Good
but they have no damaging effects on the liver.
Okay. Very good.
Just on the red blood cells.
Fantastic. All right. Liver and onions. We delivered what we promised at the beginning of the show, and that is good. So if you're giving your dog, I guess, a lot of raw onions on, avoid it.
Every once in a while, if you're like giving some table scraps to your dog and there's,
onion
some
slips in.
Some onion in with whatever, that's not a big deal. But I think, some people must do that regularly enough or else the dog gets into the garbage.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, gorges itself on something that's loaded with onions.
An old onion.
Yeah.
That she tossed out.
I don't know. I remember when my family, we had our first dog and he was still a puppy and probably about, 6-8 months old. And my mom was chopping something in the kitchen, so of course he was attending because the great things can possibly fall off the counter when this is happening, and he's learned that already.
It's all about hope. Without hope, it's all darkness.
And he didn't like the taste of onion. We discovered, we didn't know that it was bad for him. So
sure.
We're like, okay, here you go.
Absolutely.
And he got it in his mouth, and he put it down, and he went and got a drink. And he came back and he barked at it. So
everyone's a critic.
Thumbs down for onion from him.
1.5 stars. It's on Yelp. Dog reviews of onions.
Yes.
So you like onions, huh?
I love them.
You put a lot on things.
I don't eat them like an apple, but
no, my brother does that. That's weird.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it's not fun to look at even. It's just the whole process is horrifying and disgusting. Yeah.
Like a raw onion?
He's got no problem with that. He doesn't do it regularly. He doesn't like sit down to watch ESPN and like get this raw onion and just start munching. But I think he does it more for shock value.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah, I know. It's my brother.
Wow.
So, interesting. Yeah, but like I said, I'm starting to get really good onions on various things, and I'm starting to enjoy them and appreciate them. My wife and I, our relationship was predicated on like our mutual loathing of onions. But now that I've started to like onions, she's looking at me like I'm some sort of traitor. It's just, so I'm afraid there's going to be papers filed soon. I don't know. I have to be careful here. It's irreconcilable onion will be that's how it goes.
Yeah,
we'll
watch out for that.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you for all the great information, and next week, chopped liver and diced onions. I don't know. We'll figure something out here on the Radio Vet with Dr. Kelly on.